Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. This is the Sunday garden question and answer video that I've been doing for a while now. If you have gardening questions, you can ask them down at the bottom of this video. And then the next time I do one of these, I will go through the list of questions and pick out the ones I think will help the group the most. Next Sunday is actually the Subscriber Sunday video where subscribers send in photos of things in their yard that they're proud of. The email address is right here for that. Include Subscriber Sunday or something like that, or subscriber photos as the title of that email if you're interested in participating in that. The week after that, we'll get back to these garden question and answer videos. A lot of progress was made on this yard this week. I don't know if you guys, all of you watched the 3 videos I've put up so far. The first one was doing some soil testing. The second one was I used the drone up above here and painted the lines on the ground for where paths and patios, that kind of thing, are going to be. And none of these paths are going to be just perfect straight line things. They're going to be, they'll have plants along them and that kind of thing. I'm not into really formal lines on the ground, but you'll see that as it evolves. And the third video is putting out some compost on the entire space. Debris piles behind me. This is when you're starting a project like this, you don't know, well, I don't know whether to use the background of the half-painted shed or the debris piles that need to be chipped up and that kind of thing. So this stuff still has to be chipped up, and that'll be the 4th video, is chipping up this material, grinding up some leaves, and I've got 2 big loads of wood chips on the driveway that I got for free this week, and that's what's going to be mulching the space. So you'll see that this coming week. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel to keep up with those kinds of things. Also, sometime maybe even before today is over with, I don't know, you'll see on some YouTubers' channels, there's a little button down at the bottom that says join, and it's a membership thing. You're still going to see just as many videos on my channel, but I am going to have a little join button down at the bottom. And like I said, I don't know if it's going to be up before today's over with or sometime this week. There's going to be different levels of assistance that you can provide me, and in return, I'm going to be doing a few extra videos, including a live Q&A. A live members only Q&A once a month. So there'll just be a set time every month, and you can just join. If you miss it and you're a member, you can still watch it. It'll just be recorded. Okay, on to the questions for the week. And like I say, next week will be the Subscriber Sunday video, and then we'll get back to these all the rest of the Sundays in December. Somebody asked me about removing St. Augustine grass. For those of you who aren't familiar, St. Aug will grow in my area. It's a warm season grass, goes dormant in the wintertime. Beautiful lush green by mid to late spring and through the whole summer and until about now. Mostly on the Gulf Coast in Florida is where you see lots of St. Aug. And they were asking me about removing it and whether you could just bury it like I'm doing these annual weeds out here with this compost I'm standing in. Most of this stuff is annual weeds that I only see in turf, and they're probably not going to grow well in the bed space. I'm going to get a few things popping up through here, which I can spray with a vinegar solution or something like that. But when you're talking about St. Augustine, which is a creeping, pretty aggressive grass, I think you either have to spray it with a herbicide or you have to go get a sod cutter. A sod cutter is probably your best choice, and just actually go physically remove it with the sod cutter, roll it up, give it to a neighbor if it's in good shape. But if you're trying to reduce the size of your St. Aug lawn, sod cutter or herbicide, that's really your 2 choices. Burying it in mulch is probably not even going to slow it down. It's probably come right back through it. Somebody asked me about recommending a frost protection cloth on Amazon, and I'll link one down below. Most of the frost protection stuff on there is just junk. You want to look at the ounces per yard. That's the weight of the actual fabric. And so these are either cotton fabrics or some sort of polyester fabrics that we can use to cover plants, that are being winterized. I have all this stuff right here, pot to pot, and I have a cover for them. But most of the covers on Amazon, for whatever reason, are like half an ounce per yard or a 1 ounce per yard. I wouldn't consider buying anything less than 2 ounces per yard. That will give you actual winter protection. And they're also thick enough that they last season over season. If you buy one of those ½ ounce per yard fabrics, you're going to tear it on something, pulling it around the yard. You're never going to get 2 seasons out of it. Somebody asked me about watering new bulbs. That's just going to be just like anything else. If it's not raining, or if you think that space is becoming dry, or if you amended the soil a lot, sometimes water maybe pass through that space a little more. But just go out there like anything else, put your finger down in the ground about 2 inches, and if the space is dry, water them. I doubt very seriously your bulbs need any water beyond the first time when you put them in the ground through the winter. Most of you watching are not going to have to water bulbs. There's some possibility. So, you know, go check them if you're worried about them. But for the most part, I think if you had planted them a month ago or whatever amount of weeks ago and they were still moist today, probably going to be moist through the whole winter. You're probably not going to have to worry about it until they're coming up in the spring. Somebody asked me about fertilizing perennials in zone 9A, continuing to fertilize them. You need to let your perennial things that go to sleep on their own. I know it's still warm for those of you, you know, possibly in Texas, and I got a train over here, I don't know if you can hear it, and Florida and that kind of thing. But you still need to let your perennials go to sleep naturally, and if you keep pushing them, that's going to allow more damage when actual cold does come. So back off the fertilizer and wait till you start seeing them coming back up in the spring and start fertilizing them again then. And I'd back off by late summer on anything that you're fertilizing. Just the plants need to go to sleep, you know, just naturally on their own. That train's really loud. Somebody asked me about evergreens that they could put in a dog yard that aren't poisonous, or I guess some sort of fenced in dog area with a dog or something like that. Obviously there are a few things that dogs, if your dogs chew on things, you do need to look up, you know, any plant that you're using. But I don't know where you live, and so some of these questions, if you're asking me for a recommendation for a plant, I have no idea where you are, and so that's I can't really do that. But I would think any conifer. I don't think dogs going to chew on conifers like green giant arborvitae or junipers would be probably a really good choice, like a blue point juniper or something like that. Most of you watching could grow a blue point juniper. That might be a good choice. A little slower growing, but leafy plants and chewing, dogs that chew probably are, that's probably the things they're going to chew on mostly. They won't chew on a blue point juniper very long. It's kind of, it'll bite them back. Let's see. Somebody's tree-formed gardenias. They wanted to know whether they should bring them in for the winter. They're in zone 7, and gardenias are fine outside in zone 7, but not in a container. They would definitely be killed in a container. You're gonna have to take them in and out. There's no way there's enough light and humidity in your house to grow gardenias in the house successfully through the entire winter, unless you had some sort of a light on them, some sort of grow light on them, and we're misting them occasionally. There's no other way you're going to grow a gardenia in the house unless you have assistance. So it needs to go in and out. Like we've had 2 or 3 nights that would have hurt it so far this year, but every other night, there's stuff here that would definitely, these camellias in these pots, I definitely wouldn't have out here if it was cold, but I've had them out here for the last week. And so for the most part, that gardenia can stay outside for 80% of the winter nights probably. They also had some concern about having yellow leaves on them. Interior yellow leaves on gardenias, and it's a sign on a lot of plants, but especially on gardenias, if you see yellow leaves on the interior of the plant, that means it got too dry at some point. Doesn't mean it's dry right then, but at some point in the last week or two, it got dry, and a gardenia will shed the interior leaves to compensate for a lack of water. It will not shed the outer leaves where it flowers. Which kind of makes sense. The plant's trying to, plants ultimately trying to produce seeds, and so it's always going to thin from the middle. And so anytime you see middle thinning on plants, especially conifers, if you see that browning out in the interior of a conifer, it means it got too dry. Could still be too dry. I always have to be careful when I say something got dry. That's the way I have to say it. Something got dry. It doesn't mean it is dry. But at some point over the last month or so, it got dry. Go check it before you water it, because it may have corrected itself with rainfall or whatever. I sometimes send people into the opposite of watering it constantly, and I don't want you to do that. Go check it and then water it. Somebody asked about winter watering just in general, and this is going to be totally where you are. I've planted 2 plants so far in this yard over here by the shed. I'm not going to have to water them all winter long here in North Carolina. It would really, really surprise me. We got 1.5 inches of rain yesterday. That 1.5 inches of rain with these cool temperatures would last a very long time. So, like I say, it depends on where you're at. Totally depends on where you're at. We can get situations in the wintertime where the ground can freeze some, and then we'll get some wind across the top of things, and you could get some desiccation. on plants, meaning that they just can't access water from the ground. And maybe in that situation, if I had a bunch of windy days in a row where the wind was, which can happen in the wintertime, where it was blowing 25, 30, 40 miles an hour for several days in a row, that might be a time to consider winter watering. Somebody asked me about using humic acid on their lawn and if it was beneficial. Humic acid is humification is the process with which green things turn to humus or compost. It's like the middle process before they're completely composted. And it is beneficial for lots of reasons. But typically lawns produce their own humus. The cuttings, from mowing your grass, all those are constantly breaking down. And so I think it's completely unnecessary. Now the problem with the internet is there's 50 companies that sell humic acid and want you to put it on your golf course or your home turf or your plants or whatever, and they own search on the internet. So if you search, is humic acid good for my lawn, you're going to get 25 companies for the first 2 pages trying to sell you humic acid. And then eventually you'll get to, some university like the University of Florida or North Carolina State University, which is right down the road here, or, somebody somewhere wrote a paper that said, yeah, humic acid is, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. And that's the answer. It probably is beneficial for newly planted lawns, probably not that beneficial for established lawns. They have material breaking down in them anyway called thatch, the thatch layer that's down at the bottom. So I think it's one of those oversold, unnecessary things. And unfortunately, like I say, on the internet, companies are very good at using tag words and that kind of thing to get themselves up to the top of search. So something can seem very exciting. Try to go to the next page and the next page and the next page and find an actual article written by a professor at a university somewhere that actually took the time to try to figure out whether humic acid is beneficial for your lawns at all. Not going to hurt anything, probably not going to help anything. That's the answer. Somebody asked me about those tree-formed azaleas that I've shown a couple times down in Mobile and how to do it, and maybe I could show some tree forming over time. Obviously, that video series would take 2 or 3 years to do. That would take a long time. I will plant something at some point and then realize that I can tree form it. Most of the time, it's just seeing down at the bottom that you have, good structure, 3 stems. I've got an osmanthus back here by this fence that I think I'm going to leave. It's screaming tree form, and so eventually I'll limb that thing up and show you how to do it. Most of the time in a nursery setting, when they're tree forming things like the gardenias I just talked about or the azaleas that you saw, they're actually leaving the plants very, very close together for a long time and forcing them to search for sunlight and compete against one another and grow taller that way quickly. And so most of the time that's what's happening. Even in tree nurseries, that's a lot of times what they're doing is they're trying to grow them as fast as, by putting them close together, they can make them grow really quickly taller. Don't know if I can show the azalea thing, but I will show some tree forming of some shrubs when I have the opportunity to do so. Somebody asked me, let's see, about climate zones versus sunset zones, because you see the sunset zone thing on some tags. I did a video on this, and I think it was on a Subscriber Sunday video where I just opened the Subscriber Sunday video with talking about sunset western zone, the zone map. I'm going to do an independent video of this because I think this is important. Last week I talked about a plant that was hardy in zone 5 to 9, but I don't think it's hardy in zone 9 in the southeast. I only think it's hardy in zone 9, like on the west coast, like Northern California, that kind of thing, because it doesn't get as hot there during the summertime. So when we're talking about the zones, the horticultural zone map only deals with cold. It doesn't deal with heat. And so that's where the sunset zones, they deal with heat. And we should have both of them on the tag, and we should know, not only do I live in zone 7B, but I should also know the sunset zone that I live in, which is something like 21, or I can't remember, 21 or something like that. If we have both of those on the tag, you would see that some of those conifers that say they grow down to zone 9 really just grow on the west coast where it's cooler. And so I'll shoot a video on that, the horticultural zones versus the sun. So basically takes into account not only cold, but also hot. Obviously, the plants are outside 12 months of the year, not just in the winter time. So at some point you'll see that video, but yes, the sunset zones are about heat tolerance of plants rather than cold. Somebody asked me about planting some Zhuzhou loropetalum. Go ahead and plant them going into winter. They're only about a foot tall. I think they had started the plants. Definitely don't plant them. Loropetalum is extremely in zone 7. Loropetalum is extremely it'll get killed in the wintertime. If you plant 1 gallon loropetalum in November or December in zone 7, it'll die. That's what I'm talking about with that. Leafy evergreen plants that are only hardy up to your zone, once you get to November or December, I don't plant them. So somebody asked me about planting lavender in Atlanta, and it is too humid. Well, it's not too humid. People do grow lavender in the southeast, but most folks are not successful with it. Raising them up a little bit definitely helps. Putting them on some sort of slope definitely helps. But there's a variety called Phenomenal that the Southern Living Plant Collection has, and I'm going to try it in this yard next year, but it's supposed to be heat tolerant and more tolerant to humidity. I'm going to try it this year and see if that's the case, or if I can get it to grow here, because I would really like to have lavender as well. But like I say, through plant breeding, we are seeing varieties of lavender more heat tolerant and more tolerant to the humidity. So okay, that was most of the questions from this week. I think there were a few more than that. Again, ask the questions down below, and we're 2 weeks away from another garden and answer question video. Garden question and answer video. Thanks for watching.